You guys, okay, Katie, you can ask your question now. It's being recorded.
Okay. I don't know if any other groups have the same issue, but I'm actually in a group with Eric for the pitch. And
Great.
I already asked in our group chat because I can't make the pitch on Thursday because I'm going to be on the plane to LA during that time.
Yeah.
So shall we as an entire group then do the pitch before Thursday and then send you a link, or should they do it without me? I don't know what the best option is in that case.
They can do it without you, Katie. If everyone else is available, let them do it without you, because live is always better. I get to hear it live. I get to respond intuitively, which is better. I don't mind watching recordings from the people that cannot make it on Thursday, because I'm doing a switcheroo on you. So I understand some people just can't make it. If the recording is being sent in, of course, you know, we're going to look at the recording. But it's good if you give your chance, if you give your group a chance to do it live, and then you can watch the recording.
Okay.
See what the feedback
sounds good.
Is that okay?
Yeah. Yeah, sure. For me, it's fine. I just wanted to know what's best for the group and the fairest option to deal with it. So
that would be great. Yeah. I'm sorry on the plane that day. So I just repeat, because what I just said was not recorded because I'm an idiot and didn't put the recording button on. We're not going to meet on Saturday in 2 weeks. We're going to meet on Tuesday before the Saturday in 2 weeks, which is, I believe, the 1st or the 2nd. I forgot, because I'm going to a wedding on Saturday. So anyone who can't make it, cannot make their pitch live, can send the pitch in via video, and I'll look at it and I'll provide feedback in that session. And then people can watch the recording, and anyone who can make it is great. What we're going to do also is we're going to do the final together. The final has questions, multiple choice questions, and a final case study. And we're going to do the final together, which gives me an opportunity to answer final questions that you might have, to talk about some concepts that still need clarifying. So no worries on the final. You do not have to do this on your own. You can do it with me on Thursday, or watch the recording and then do it. What we do today, if I share my screen here, un momento per favor, is going to be this. Are you guys seeing my screen, Aru? Yeah, good, great. Let me just move this up here. Nah. So what we're talking about today, I'm going to talk about the main production related agreements, the finance related agreements, and the distribution agreements. And I'm also going to walk you through a final prep case study, which is then the one you can send in for extra credit points, and you don't even have to do it on your own. Yay. And then I'm going to answer, of course, any questions that you might have regarding the subject matter. I'm basically reflecting on the most important terms you should include, and then also some things you need to be careful with to avoid, for lack of a better word. Can you guys hear me okay, by the way? Because I bought this new fancy microphone, but it's a condenser microphone, and if it's not right in front of my face, sometimes it doesn't sound good. But you guys can hear me okay? Yeah, good. Okay. Yeah, I started recording some videos, and that microphone is great for that. But so let's get going. Number one. We know that the first step of any project that we put our hands on is going to have to be secured by us. That means there needs to be an option agreement, there needs to be maybe a co-production agreement, and there needs to be maybe a shopping agreement. These agreements are used to allow you, the producer, the person that puts the project together, to put the project together and control it exclusively. If you do not control it, you're going to run into a bunch of problems, because the minute you find someone interested in financing your project or distributing your project, you will likely find out how greedy your business partners are. I know this sounds terrible, but this happened to me on pretty much every project. So whenever you're ready to actually do it, people become obviously more expensive. The writer's like, oh, Netflix is doing this, maybe I should up my fee. You know, it's, oh, you have an investor, maybe I should be a co-producer, not just a writer. So there are all these conversations which ideally to be avoided. So the first thing you do is you're going to talk, let's say it's a script that was given to you, and it's an original script by a writer. The first thing you do is you do an option agreement with the writer, but you also ask the writer, has this project been anywhere else before I got it? Did you work with another producer? Was it maybe with the studio or a streamer or a network station? Are there any turnaround costs associated to it that I have to worry about paying? Because turnaround costs are connected to the IP. And if you acquire the IP through an option and then a purchase, you're responsible for those. So you want to know what those are and if there are any. You also want to know, is there someone that has helped you, the writer, in putting this idea together? Have you worked with someone on the creative level? Is there someone that had input? Who is this person? They need to sign a waiver. They need to assign all the rights to you, writer, or you and that person will assign all the rights to me when I do the option. The option agreement would include something like, I'm paying you $500 for the option for the first year. I'm paying you another $500 for the second year if I use it, and I might want an extension for the third year. So you get an option that gives you the option to extend, ideally for 2 more years. Most writers say, after 2 years, I'm going to pull the plug. Some writers are okay with doing 3 years. I've usually, most of my deals I've done 3 years. So you should be able to do that too. The option agreement includes the option price, which then also goes against the purchase price. And the purchase price is what you pay for the script in the end. So you would agree an option agreement that says, I'm going to pay you $500 for the purchase in the first year, $500 for the second year, $500 for the third year, and the entire $1,500 going against the purchase price, which is $30,000 for this $1 million movie. The purchase price you negotiate based on the fact if the writer is a WGA member. So what kind of writer is it? Are they newbie? Are they like mid-level, or are they like a high-paid A-level writer? Obviously, that dictates the purchase price, right? If they are not in the Writers Guild, what I usually do, because some good writers, they're just newbies and they have great ideas. So I don't want to not be able to engage those, but I still want to be fair. So I use Writers Guild minimums. So I basically go to the website of the Writers Guild. I look, because these change all the time. So I look at, okay, what is my budget that I'm thinking of making this in? Maybe I want to do a $3 million movie. And then I look at the Writers Guild minimum for this budget range, which they show us. So the Writers Guild minimums are reflected based on budgets. They go like, if it's under $1 million, it's this much. If it's $1 million to $3 million, it's that much. If it's $3 million to $5 million, it's that much. So they give you a guidance as to what you should be paying for the purchase price. You do have the option for a writer that's not in the Writers Guild to pay them obviously less than the Writers Guild minimum because they're not a Writers Guild writer. I usually pay the minimums because I want to be respectful and writers appreciate it. So that's something to think about. The Writers Guild also gives you options for payments for television shows, Bibles, or treatments. So there are all these different things in there. And for rewrites, you want to really make sure that you write something in there that says, with this option, you agreed to do so and so many rewrites for me for free. And after that number, I'm going to start paying for the rewrites X amount. And whatever I pay for the rewrites also goes against the purchase price. So everything you should be paying to the writer ideally should go against the purchase price. So when the time comes that you're doing your movie, you're only paying the balance to then pay the rights. That's the first thing. Now, if the idea that is brought to you by the writer is based on something else, like the book rights, or you maybe want to do book rights or a right for a comic, or you saw a short movie that you want to do a feature-length movie out of, or something that's an underlying rights component, you would have to make sure that you also get an option for the underlying rights and also agree the purchase price for the underlying rights. So there are two payments then that are applicable here. The payment to the writer that is then doing the screenplay, which if it is not an original idea that's theirs, is a writer for hire agreement. The difference between a writer for hire agreement and the regular agreement that acquires an original script is that in the writer for hire agreement, the writer has no rights and assigns no rights to you because all the rights are automatically with you if the underlying idea is purchased by you, or if the underlying idea is yours. So let's say the book rights, you found a book series and you're really excited about it, and you hire this writer and you say, I wanted to give me a treatment, a Bible for this show, and I wanted to write the script. Here's what I'm going to pay for the treatment. Here's what I want to pay for the script. You know, can you do that? Here's what I'm going to pay for rewrites. Here is the time frame for the rewrites. You also need to write down how much time you allot for these rewrites to be done, because you don't want the writer to take 5 years to write a rewrite. So all these things are included in your rights agreement. And the chain of title is what you look at when it comes closer to getting your movie done. And that's usually done by a clearinghouse, like Denny's Angels is one of those clearinghouses. I can maybe put that in the chat. Chat, open up. Here we go. Dennis Angels. Dennis Angels is a law firm that specifies in clearing chain of titles. So the chain of title is nothing else than something that shows you if this project has been somewhere else, who it had, and what the potential issues are that you need to look into. So it shows you where the project has been every step of the way. That's why it's important to look at to make sure that no one else potentially owns the project already or has dibs on it or something. These are kind of the important things to think about very early on. Now, if you have another producer that comes to you and says, I have this amazing script that I stumbled over, and I heard you took Jeanette's class and I want to do it with you because you know so much now, something like this. You bring them benefit. They chose you to help them put this movie together. In that case, you would do a co-production agreement. And in the co-production agreement, you would agree to share these rights with the other producer who has optioned them the same way I just described you would option them. Your job is then also to make sure that they have all the rights, that they have all the underlying rights, and then you do a co-production deal that says we both own the rights and we own it for this period of time together during which we're putting this movie together. And here's what each of us are doing. I am responsible for the financing. You're responsible for getting the script ready, working with the writer. We're both responsible for packaging. We're both responsible for the production itself. We're both responsible for getting sales agents, and we're both responsible for those kind of things. So you can put in this co-production agreement all the things that you guys are sharing when it comes to the scope of work. And you're putting in there that you as the co-producer are sharing the rights with the other producer now for, let's say, 3 years during which you are putting the project together. Now, let's say, for example, during that process, you were able to attach some financing, or you were able to attach a distributor, or you were able to maybe attach an actor, right? And all of a sudden, the 3 years run out. And the producer then is a little bit of an asshole and says, yeah, you know, I decided I'm just going to do this on my own because now I have the cast, now I have the distribution deal, and now I really don't need you anymore because I can do this on my own and I can save paying you a producer fee. Not so fast, because what you're also going to put in this co-production agreement in this case is a turnaround clause, which says if this producer uses any of the elements that you have secured, they have to either pay you for them as a, like, you know, just like a turnaround payment kill fee kind of thing, or they cannot release you from the project. You're going to stay on the project and you're going to be the producer of the project, and you're going to make that producer fee that you agreed to get, and you're going to get the profit participation that you agreed to get in the co-producing agreement. So you providing elements to this producer enables you to get your hook into the IP in case they want to let you go after you did a great job and they just take more time to put it together, or it just takes more time to put it together. So the termination of 3 years would be applicable, but there are exclusions subject to what you brought to the table. And if you spend any money while you did this job, all that money that you spent becomes part of turnaround that needs to be paid to you if he wants to do, or he or she wants to do the project without you, or if the project doesn't get made for whatever reasons by you and this other producer, and then all of a sudden 10 years later someone else picks it up and says, wow, that was a great idea, these guys didn't get it done, but I now want to get it done. At that time, that person has to pay you all the monies that you have advanced for the project until this time. Do you guys have any questions about this?
Yeah, I have one question.
Go ahead.
If you've written an original script, but it's based off of a true story, are there any rights you need to secure?
Yes. If it is based on a true story, the person whose true story it is you should contact them and get them to agree, ideally, maybe give you life rights to that story if it's their story, so that you have an agreement with them to say, we're going to do the story of your life and what happened to you, and I want you to give me those rights. You do an underlying rights deal with them in essence.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what if that story is like 200 years old or something like that, where
I
it's
don't think you need to
the
do
person's
anything
death?
then, honestly,
Okay.
because there is an expansion thing. It becomes public domain after a certain time, and I want to say it's 75 years, changes all the time. Not sure, but it's about that. It's anywhere between 70 and 90 years. If it's older
Okay.
than that, it's a public domain title and you can do whatever you want.
Cool.
Good
Thank you.
question though. Thank you for that. Any other questions that you guys have for this?
Yeah, when you're putting together your financials, do you include that rights purchase to be covered by a loan or somewhere, or
Yes, very good
the
question.
option and the rights purchase, or is that being covered or reimbursed?
Very good question, Matt. All the things you do at this stage, anything you pay for writers, for underlying rights, for story development, is all part of your development and rights fee line item in your budget. And that's where you put that in. And that's what you get repaid then. You would get paid on this the minute the project closes, meaning the bond company is issued and all the finance sources are released to you. So in accordance with pre-production, basically, in most cases, you would get paid all these monies back. Absolutely, yes.
Okay, cool. So you're kind of at like a net zero.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
As a producer.
Well, I would
Sort of.
I would go a step further and say you should add an interest on that, because you're basically investing money in your project. And if someone else would have given you that money, they would have charged you an interest. So what I do, if the project can afford it, I add a 20% premium on whatever I invested, because it's my investment. If I would have asked someone else to give me the development money, they would have charged me a 20% premium, which I would have to pay right at that time on closing. I would pay them their development money back, plus I would pay them a 20% premium on that development money. So now if I am doing all this on my own, I charge a 20% premium, and so should you.
It's kind of like a finder's fee or something.
It's like, no, it's like a return on your investment. You made an investment here. You advanced money, which is an investment, which is a loan you're giving to this movie. You have to look at yourself as the financier at that point. You know, their money comes from somewhere. If you would have taken it from somewhere else, they would have charged you a premium or an interest.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You're the same thing. Now, obviously, this is very much driven by what your budget can afford. So it might be that you find that at the end of the day, all of a sudden, there's something that pops up and you have to spend some money. And you have to decide, where does this money come from? Am I taking it, am I paying more or finding more money to cover this budget? Or am I taking it from some of the fees that I'm owed, and then I'm deferring some of these? So in essence, what you want to do, you put it in the line item, you add a 20% premium. And then the question later becomes, can you pay it out depending on what the budget's supposed to be, subject to what the bond company dictates or subject to other things you're facing as you're getting closer into production. So you might find that in some cases, I'm not saying all, but you might find that a portion of that you might have to defer into the recoupment position, because you have to keep your budget at a feasible level. This is like, just in case you can't pay yourself. But in essence, what you do is you put it in and you add a premium, and it becomes a development component.
Cool.
So when we do this movie thing and we create this project, it is a little bit like, creating a startup. You're creating an LLC specifically for this movie or for this TV show, where you put all these rights in, and where you also use that LLC to enter into all these agreements. This LLC can protect you legally, so you're not personally liable for any of these agreements you enter into, unless you do something that's against the law, and then you're absolutely liable. But in general, you want to put a Chinese wall between you and anyone connected to the production and to the project to protect yourself and your personal assets. That is why you create a production LLC. There is a way to do this that is inexpensive. I use a company called Ink Smart. Let me put that in here. InkSmart. I think their website is inksmart.biz. InkSmart.biz. I use those guys because they register companies for like $150. I'm not going to lawyers and pay them upwards of $2,000 to register an LLC for me in California, or in New Mexico, or in Nevada, or wherever I'm going with that thing. So I usually just use these guys. They register the LLC for me. They do everything that is needed legally. They give me a draft for an operating agreement that I then fill in that to say, I own this LLC 100%. And this is the operating agreement that later on can be amended as you share membership interest to this LLC with equity investors. So you can morph this thing around later, but in the beginning, it's just you own it 100% and you file it as such. And what these guys also do, they get to the EIN, which is the tax identification number that is needed for you to actually create a bank account for this LLC. And you should definitely keep all that separate. You should generate a bank account very early on, and then you fund it. For these development fees, for example, you start putting money into this bank account because later you can show to the investor, here's the investments I make personally that I will be recouping. And here's all the money where it's going to pay the production, because all this account does, it will later also be the production account. So it's a very easy way for you to be very transparent with whoever joins you in that LLC to show, look, here's the bank statements, here's what we're doing. We're not buying Ferraris with the money that comes into the account. We're actually using it for the production and for pre-production and for scouting and for budgeting to get a budget done and for all these things that we need to do maybe before the bond company can close the movie. So it's important to have the EIN and the operating agreement and the filing documents done first thing. And you can do it by InkSmart, or you can do it by a lawyer, of course. When I do these LLCs, I always keep all membership interest 100% with me. Even if I have a co-production with another producer, I give the other producer profit participation, but I don't give them membership interest. The only person that gets membership interest is the person that pays for membership interest, which is your investor. Do not release any membership interest to cast, to co-producers, to talent, to whoever, because you need to protect your little film LLC, because that is the heart of your project. And that is also the entity that holds the copyright. No one should be participating other than your equity investor. Important. The other thing you want to think about is early on, when you enter into all these various finance agreements, distribution agreements, and all the things that are important that you want to do, you might want to have a lawyer look at them. Obviously, I'm providing you with a lot of templates in this class that you can use, but you should still, have them reviewed by a lawyer. I'm obviously not a lawyer, so all the information I'm giving you today is information I use on my movies and I'm sharing with you, but I cannot give you legal advice because I'm not allowed to. But when I work with lawyers, I do it in two ways. There are two different lawyers I use. The one is the production lawyer. The production lawyer basically does the crew deals, the boilerplate kind of production deals that are not very difficult to do. These people do not have to cost a lot of money. You can do a budgeted fee for them to say, you're the production lawyer, what are you going to charge me? Give me like, what, 10,000 for this movie all in, or what is it going to be? There is the other lawyer that you will deal with when you come to the bank closing. The bank closing is very much, it's the same process basically than the completion bond closing. It entails about 150 documents that someone needs to look at that are very complex. I mean, most of them are boilerplate, but they are complex. So you want someone to guide you through that process. And it's usually someone the bank will suggest. And then you pay for that person. So that lawyer is going to be the lawyer that the bank would have to approve. And part of that fee, that lawyer fee, is charged by the bank to you as a legal fee. So a portion of that fee is already paid for because you're paying the bank a legal fee. And then maybe the lawyer says to you, well, legal fee is very low that the bank's paying me, maybe you need to add some. In the ideal world, you also want to agree a flat fee on this. This is likely going to be a little more than the regular production lawyer, but it shouldn't be more than, a certain small percentage of the budget. The highest I've paid let's say on a movie that's about 20 million, I think the most I've ever paid is 250,000, just to give you kind of a range, right? Banks usually charge between 20 and 50,000 for this kind of lawyer, but if it's a smaller budgeted movie, that fee goes down. So obviously it's a little bit driven by the budget size. So you don't have to be shy asking the lawyer for a flat fee. Now, if the lawyer says, you know, I don't really know, this looks like a complicated process, I might have to spend a lot of time, then what they'll do is they'll have you sign a retainer agreement. That retainer agreement says you pay me whatever, 5,000 now as a retainer, and then I charge you hourly, and they charge you anywhere from 250 to like 750 an hour. I mean, that's what I've paid. You don't want to pay 750 an hour because that's just stupid. You should try to keep that number as low as possible. There are some great lawyers that I have used that if you need someone, I can recommend to you. I prefer using lawyers that are also litigators. That's just my personal preference, because I've dealt with a lot of lawsuits where people, when they see you make money with the movie, or when you see you are a person that has assets, they go and sue you for no good reason. California allows this. It's a very California thing to do, because in California, other than, for example, Germany, you don't really have to prove that your case has merit. In Germany, if you sue someone, you have to bring the case to the court, and it has to be based on something that was actually done wrong, and that can be proven as something that was actually done wrong to you or to them when they sue you. So they have to actually, before they even sue you, make a case with the court that there is a real case here, that you did something wrong. In California and maybe other states in the US, the proof of the proof burden is with the person that is being sued. So we have to actually say that's not true. Someone can come around and can just sue us for no good reason, and we have to say, hold on a second, you're full of shit, excuse my French. So because of this litigious nature, I have learned to work with litigators for everything I do. So I use litigation lawyers to do my transactional stuff. So they do all my deals. They do my finance deals. They do my distribution deals. They do all these deals because they look at it from the point of view is, what could we be sued for? And how do we prevent that from happening? By being very specific and really defining very much a situation that they could sue us for already early on in an agreement. My personal preference, you can do whatever you want, but I like it. So I work with a litigator who I use by now for everything, and he is fairly known. I actually met him when he kicked my ass on a lawsuit where I was involved. I wasn't the person being sued, but I was involved with the people that were being sued. So I got to be in deposition with this guy, and he grilled me like there was no tomorrow.
She was the hardest reader in the land.
Kate, can we mute you? Let's mute Kate here. So what we're doing here is we are, deciding what is the right lawyer for us. When you meet with the lawyer, you have to ask them what they have done before, because a lot of lawyers are very salesy. They say, yeah, I've done all this and I've done all that. And then you say, okay, what movies have you worked on? And then please do me a favor and call the producers, because I cannot tell you how many lawyers I've worked with that were really bad and still very expensive. So it's a very real thing, especially in California, where we have a lot of lawyers that are just mediocre. So that's something for you to really consider. And again, email me if you'd like to have a recommendation. I'm happy to recommend my lawyer to, which I found over 20 years of working in the industry and working with all the big law firms, Loeb & Loeb, Shepard Mullen, Marty Singer, I mean, anyone. So feel free to check it out. Questions about this? Okay. So we have a few essential agreements that we started doing earlier, and I mentioned just now the co-production deal memo, right? There are different kinds of co-production deal memos, and they pretty much relate to what you're doing in the co-production. So the first one we talked about earlier was the one where you do a deal with the producer that you do a project with, based on them bringing you a project or you contacting them because of something that they can do for you that has merit. So let's say you have the idea of the project and it's your project, and you want to contact another producer who has done a project that's similar, and you want to kind of pick their brain and you want to kind of have them help you put it together. So in that case, you need to be very specific as to what you want them to do. Are they going to help you with locations? Are they going to help you with casting? Are they going to help you with distribution? Are they going to help you with financing? What do you want them to do? and you specify this in the co-production agreement as their scope. And you specify that they get paid only if and when the scope was delivered. So if they say I can attach Halle Berry and Halle Berry doesn't show, no payment, no nothing, no anything. If they say they can attach Halle Berry and Halle Berry gets attached, as long as Halle Berry is attached, this co-producer is now attached, no matter how long that co-producing agreement is, because of the turnaround clause we just talked about earlier. So be very specific as to what you want them to do and when you want them to pay and what you want them to pay and if you want them to have some profit participation. The other version of co-production agreements is for you to go into a country abroad, let's say Germany, for example, and you want to access local subsidies. Local subsidies are often driven by the application being done through local producers. So Germany has two pots of money that you can access. The one is the regular tax credit money bucket, very similar to the tax credits here. You go to the location, you shoot, you get money. Okay, so that's kind of a given thing. You don't necessarily need a co-producer for that, but I always use them because I use them for other things I'll get into in a minute. The second pot, which Germany has and other countries have too, is something that is driven by the content, by the European flair of the content. And that has to do a little bit like the Canadian point system. When you do Canadian content, they want to see a Canadian director, they want to see Canadian actors, they want to see Canadian this and the other. A little bit like the content thing in Canada is also this grand thing. In that case, you do need a local producer who knows how to access these pots in the regions that you're shooting in. In Germany, for example, there are different regions, North Rhine-Westphalia, Berlin, Bavaria, where they have these pots and they have different levels of these pots. And you want to use the pot that has the most money, which in our case in Germany is North Rhine-Westphalia. And you want a producer that is located in North Rhine-Westphalia. And you want to shoot the movie in North Rhine-Westphalia. So for you, it's important to find a local co-production partner who would access local subsidies for you, secure them for you, and then ideally service the production locally for you by creating, production team that is local. They use local this, that, and the other DPs, maybe some German actors, if we talk about Germany as an example, maybe, anything German location, whatever you need locally, they'll arrange for you and they do for you. Now, this international co-production agreement requires that the rights are assigned to the co-producer that is local, right? That's okay for the time being that they go and get this money for you. But you have to have a reversal clause where the rights fall back to you once the movie's done or once the rights have been exploited or whatever the regulation is that is associated to this local subsidy that allows you to get the rights back at that time. So these international co-production agreements would allow you to work with an international co-producer that gets you the money. And then I pay them based on what they raise. So if we talk about, shooting this in Germany and they say to me, well, with the tax credit and the grants, I can get you about 30% of the budget. I say, great. And then you get 5% of the 30% of the budget that you're raising. Yeah, or you get 10% of the money that you're raising. Whatever the percentage is, it is related directly to the money that they're actually giving you. So they're driven by doing a good job. In the end, what I also do is I sometimes give them some profit participation points. They're usually small. They're anywhere between 2 and 5%, depending on how much money they're raising. The more money they raise for me, the higher profit participation I give them, or backend, same thing. The lower the money they raise, the lower the profit participation. So I usually put in like a scale where I say, if it's this much, you get this much fee as a percentage and this much backend. And if it's more, you get this much fee and this much backend. So it kind of is driven by what they're actually bringing to you. But if they don't bring you anything, the co-production agreement is actually not giving them anything. They're not getting a thing. So again, it's very important in both of those agreements that the scope is spelled out and that payments are only driven by delivery of the scope that was spelled out. There are executive producer agreements that we deal with a lot, and they are usually done with people that find you money or that have like a supervising component, or they just guide you on how to put things together, or they just you know, someone you want to add to the project to give it a name, because you need someone that has track record in order to get the investors and in order to pitch it with Netflix, so they say yes. Sometimes it's just like a stronger producer that gives you their name and helps you, you know, in whichever way they can. And sometimes they actually are an investor. So here again, the idea is to write down what they actually do for you and write down when they're being paid and what they're being paid. Now, if this is someone that gives you guidance early on and helps you getting the project together, they usually get a fee for spending their time on the project. So that's kind of a retainer that they get up front. And then they get a fee in the budget subject to whatever the movie being made, making, you know, this kind of budget range, being produced in this kind of budget range, and maybe them adding something to the project. If they don't give you money, or if they don't arrange money for you, they would not get a finder's fee. If they do get to arrange money for you, that executive producer fee is a finder's fee because it's driven by how much money they got you. If it's the investor themselves, then obviously the finance fee is not applicable because everything is handled in the financing agreement. But you have to be very specific again as to what does the executive producer do and how you want to pay them, and if they get any back end. If it's an investor, they obviously get back end because they also get a profit. They also get an ownership IP component. If it's someone who provides you the investor, they get a small back end, but they're not getting an ownership component. And if it's someone who guides you, you can give them also a back end profit participation depending on what they're doing. If it's just like, I'm overlooking the project with you, I'm going to guide you through the process of making it happen, it's usually a smaller back end participation. But if they put in their relationships and they get to a sales agent, or they get to deal with a distributor or something of that sort, and maybe they connect you to an agent and the agent gets you the cast, then usually it would be a larger back end. Again, it all depends on what they actually do and what that value is in connection to your project. The packaging/creative producer is someone who really just works on the creative side of the project. So that could be someone who works with the casting director, could even be the casting director, who helps you get the project cast. It could be someone who works with the writer on the script because they have very good script sense and they are really good with story, and you want them to make the script the best it can be. If they are working on the script and their ideas go into the script, you have to have them sign a waiver. If they are someone who provides cast to you, you have to make sure you have a proper turnaround clause in there to say, if the agreement runs out at a certain time, the movie is done later, but their cast has been used, they're going to be part of the movie for the life of the movie because they brought you the cast. So these things have to be dealt with. If they spend any money putting the cast together or doing anything, there has to be a turnaround clause. A turnaround clause is always put into any of these agreements, in fact, if any money was spent by the people that you're working with. So you protect them for the period that they're helping you, if they're actually spending money helping you. Any questions on this? Great. Let's go to talent deals and director deals. What you do with the director first when you meet them and talk about your project after you determined that they have the vision that is the same than yours or elevate yours, and they have the same idea about casting, is you talk to them about, very often in the beginning, just putting the project together. So you might do like a short-term development deal with them first, where you say, I'm going to pay you for the time that you help me packaging this movie or getting the script right or getting it ready for pre-production. And you just do a little bit of a development deal situation that will then lead into the engagement letter or the engagement deal with the director to direct this movie. And you want to make sure that this director deal includes a kill fee to let him go. Meaning, if for whatever reason cast does not respond to the director, or the film just is not saleable with the director, or the bond company doesn't want to bond the director, you need to option to let the director go without him holding your project hostage. So the agreement would include a waiver for any rights in relation to the script development, because they probably gave you some ideas. And it would include a kill fee to say, I can't use you, I'm going to pay you X to step off the project. So this is very important for you to do because you never know what's happening. You never know how the director really is received with the cast. It is important to attach the director before you attach cast, because cast wants to know who is directing the movie. Do they like the director? Is the director going to make them look good? Do they have an emotional connection to the director? They're like, in that case, they're like a little bit like children who want to really feel safe with daddy being the director. So they're very much driven by the director of your project in regards to whether or not they want to attach to your project. So for a talent deal, you don't need to do a development deal, because the talent will only show up once the movie starts or shortly before. But what you do here is you're going to agree in a pay or play offer, which is the first thing you send out. That is the basis for the talent engagement agreement. You send a pay or play offer to the agent together with the script saying, here's my movie, here's the script, here's the director that's going to do this, here's the producer that I have that has track record, who's going to help me produce this. And here's where I'm shooting, here's when I'm thinking of shooting. And I want your client, Halle Berry, to stick with that example, to play the role of X. I am offering this salary, and I'm offering the certain perks, and I'm willing to pay down a down payment of 20% to lock the actor in and use the name of the actor to raise financing, which is basically why you want to lock them in. Because the minute you have them attached, you can use their name to raise financing and to do pre-sales. But if you don't pay anything, and if you don't lock them in, not only can you lose them, but also you might not be able to really raise financing based on this. So you do want to lock the actor in contractually to do your movie. Because if for whatever reason they change their mind, or another project comes along that they want to do and it's slotted at the same time your project is slotted at, you can talk to the agent and say, listen, how are you going to help me move this? Now I have to move my project now because you want to have this actor do this project. Who's going to pay for this? So you make the agent liable, or the talent liable, for any kind of costs that are now associated with you having to move the picture. Or you say, you know what, I am willing to move the picture, but I'm going to reduce the salary by this number because I now have costs. So there is a negotiation to be had there if the talent agent calls you and says, we need to kind of change a few things. That's why it's important to do something in the pay or play offer early where you announce it. You also need to put in a completion one clause that the actor is bondable by the insurance company, because if they're not bondable, there's nothing you can do and you can't really engage them. The other advantage that the bond company clause has, if you word it like this agreement is subject to a completion bond insurance closing on this movie, if you word it like that, it basically also says, if the movie can't get financed, I don't owe you anything. It's a little bit of a sticky road, because theoretically and legally, you would not now be legal to pay the actor, which is not something they like. They don't like when movies fall apart. And it is not something I would suggest you do, actually do. It is a clause I put in just to protect myself in the worst case scenario, so I don't have to pay Halle Berry the $2 million that this contract says the movie's not going. But if you actually do that, this client, this agent will remember your name forever, and they will never work with you again. So it is a sticky road. You have the option to secure yourself by doing this, but you should never really do that. The better way to do it is to make sure that you are very well set up in doing your business plan, which is what you would be doing at the end of this class if you do the extra credit project, or if you do your own project. This business plan has to be very solid. You have to have equity investors secured based on the business plan. You have to have a bank term sheet that is related to the business plan and the sales estimates. You have your pre-sales. You're doing all the right steps to get this movie made. And you know that if you have Halle Berry, these steps will be very easy for you to accomplish, because it's a chicken and egg. I can make the movie if Halle Berry is in it. I know, because the sales agent told me, and all the numbers are telling me, and my equity investor loves Halle Berry and wants to spend time with her on his yacht. I know I can get this done. But if for whatever reason you don't get it done, you need an out, and this little bond company clause will give you an out. The talent agent will likely ask you to show them a backing of the offer, which means that your equity investor is probably going to be the person to back the offer. Now, since the equity investor really likes Halle Berry and is happy to pay for the movie if Halle Berry is in it, they will have no problem backing the offer because they're not actually paying for this. They're paying for this through their investment in the movie, but they're not actually paying for the salary of the actor at this very moment. They're only backing it. And since they want to invest in your movie, it's not going to be a big stretch for them to say to the talent agent, yes, I'm happy to back the offer. Talent agent is happy and they sign Halle Berry on. And what then happens is with the investment agreement with the equity investor, they'll obviously pay. And then you have all your other elements. And then through that, the actor's salary is paid. So there is a benefit to the equity investor to do this because they make more money. You get the actor you want and the project is valued higher. So it's not something you can't ask them to do. It goes very much in line with the business plan that you're putting in front of them. Any questions on this? By the way, one thing I forgot to mention with the director deal, you do want them to agree to the shooting script and the budget and the shooting schedule in writing, because you don't want them to go back later and say, I changed my mind, I want to rewrite the script, or I have this other vision now and you're in pre-production and now you have to fire the director because they're giving you a script that they really love and no one else does. So locking them in with the actual script version and the shooting schedule as well as the budget. So that they agree to shoot the movie in this time and they agree to shoot this movie under this budgeted, under this budget. You also want to exclude final cut. Don't give any director final cut. I don't care if it's Steven Spielberg. You do not. Because the minute you give a director final cut, you lose control over your project. And you, who has the equity investor included in your movie, you need to stay in control of your project. So you cannot give anyone else control over the final product, which would be done by giving someone final cut. The other thing you should do so that the director also understands that he is agreeing to the post-production schedule, which he does also, is that you maybe do the director agreement under the rules and regulation of the DGA, which secures him, gives him safety, and it also protects you because the DGA regulations say exactly how much time the director has to edit this film, maximum, and how it works, how the editing process works and how their rights work within that. So applying DGA rules is to your advantage, and it also makes the director feel very comfortable. I forgot to mention that, which I think is important. I just saw that here. No questions on this, or do you have questions on this? Okay, talk about sales agency agreements. We know that the sales agent is there to sell our movie and not to distribute our movie. So the sales agency agreement should never be a distribution agreement unless the sales agent gives you money. If they pay in advance like a distributor would, then you can have a conversation about a distribution agreement. But if they don't, they're really just representing the movie on behalf of you to the distributors that they sell it to. Important distinctions. I cannot tell you how many producers do this wrong, including my own husband. So stuff happens all the time. Sales agents will try to obtain as many rights from you as they can. Your job is to limit the rights to what they actually do. They're simply selling rights, the rights that you allow them to sell exclusively for a certain period of time. But you also put safety mechanisms in there. Also, obviously, you agree to a sales fee, you agree to the distribution expenses, you agree to what kind of delivery schedule you give them when you deliver the movie to them. You agree to exactly what kind of territories they are to represent. Most international sales agents do not sell the US rights, so that is excluded. They might not sell Canadian rights either because it's sometimes part of the US rights, so that might be excluded. You might also exclude certain rights where you have good relationships. Like I sometimes exclude Germany in my sales agreements because I can sell Germany myself and I'm saving money. So there are you basically exclude whatever rights you're excluding. The other thing you might want to exclude is online rights. Maybe you want to do the streamer rights yourself, or maybe you want to go and put this thing on Amazon yourself, or maybe you want to put it on YouTube yourself and want to make money yourself. So you can exclude certain sets of rights from the sales agent to say, you're not going to sell these. They're also not selling remake rights, spin-off rights, or merchandising rights. So those should also be not part of the sales agency agreement. You do want to put a performance clause in there simply to have the sales agent stay behind the sales estimates that they give you and tell you by which point they can achieve what portion of these sales estimates. And if they don't perform, you have the right to terminate the deal. You want them to agree to a collection agent because you don't want them to get the money from the distributor paid to them. You want the distributor to pay to the collection agent. Now, when you do a rev share deal, it's a little different because here you don't actually get a minimum guarantee. You basically get to participate in the revenues the movie generates or the film generates or the TV show generates. And what you want to watch out for here is that you're very specific as to two things. Does the rev share deal need exclusivity? Ideally not. And is the rev share deal subject to all kinds of off-the-top expenses that are being charged? Ideally not. So if you can get a rev share deal that gets you as high as you can towards gross revenues, ideally gross revenues, and you're participating in gross revenues in relation to like a percentage that you guys agree, that's fine. And then you make the distributor use their share to pay for all the costs that they have. That would be the ideal deal, gross revenue participation. The worst case for you should be adjusted gross revenue participation, which means all they get to deduct is the fee, the distribution fee that you specify, 25%, 35%, whatever it is, and the distribution expenses that you specify, 100,000, 50,000, or 1%, something specific, and that's it. They should not be deducting anything else. That is a way for you to make sure that they don't run all kinds of expenses against the revenues and then share whatever the measly result is that is left. Questions? Okay, moving on. The investor deal and the mezzanine investor deal. Let's look at that. The most important conversation with the investor to have is what the role is that the investor wants to take. Do they want an active role? Do they want a passive role? Do they want to be involved in all the decisions that you're making? Do they not want to be involved? Do they care about reading the script? Do they not care about reading the script? All these things are important because it helps you to understand what you're going to be dealing with later. If it is an investor who wants to be very much involved, you can expect them to be very much involved, which is good and bad, because you're going to have to run every decision by them that is a material decision. Material script changes, exchanging of the director, exchanging of the cast, changing the budget, changing line items, changing the sales agent, anything that affects the sales estimates. All these things have to be run by the investor who is very much involved and wants approval rights over material terms. You can also say to the investor, I don't want you to look at everything, but I will inform you in case material changes happen, which other changes I just referred to, because the investor needs to know if the value of the project is changing by you making these changes. Because if the value of the project is changing, meaning the sales estimates are changing, in this case going down, their risk profile is going up, and they need to know this and they need to be informed about this. This is your fiduciary duty to do. So just make them clear. It's a question of, do they want to be involved in every step or not? You will report material changes to them anyway, because you have to do that. You want to talk to them about the collateral that's available to them. And the collateral really means is what's available to them in rights revenues after the senior loan has been paid off and after the mezzanine loan has been paid off, if you do have a mezzanine loan. They need to understand this is the collateral that is left for them to recoup from. It's usually some international territories, and it's usually the domestic territory. And they need to be okay with that. So you need to have a conversation with them early on, showing them, here are my sales estimates, here are my pre-sales that I think I will be making. Here's what I need to pay to the bank, and here's what I'm planning to pay to a mezzanine lender. Right now it's just a plan, but it could become reality. So they need to know that they might recoup after a senior loan and a junior loan, and they need to be okay with that. You want to talk to them about potential ring fencers if you can. So ring fencers, I call collateral that I exclude from the senior loan and the junior loan. So when you do a deal with the bank, you basically allow the bank to recoup from all the rights revenues without any exclusion. That's usually what happens. Now, when you do a deal with a bank-like institution, like a lender that does senior loans, you sometimes have the option to exclude certain territories. I usually exclude the small ones, Thailand, Israel, like small little territories that bank-like institutions usually don't care about because they don't mean much to them. but they mean a lot to me and my equity investor, because now if I exclude them from the collateral from the bank, the equity investor gets to recoup from them in first position parallel to the bank. They love this. So it's a little bit of something for you to sweeten the deal for your equity investor and make their risk a little less. And they like this because whenever you pay the equity investor even tiny amounts, they get very excited, and it really increases the trust they have in you and the project. So it's a good thing to do. You want to talk to them about ownership and copyright, right? They are likely wanting to be connected to the IP, the copyright, through their membership interest in the LLC, which is reflected through the amount that they're investing in relation to the budget. So depending on how much money they're giving you, that's the amount of membership interest they get. So if they give you the entire budget, they would theoretically own 50% of the company. In that case, you really want to keep it to 49. You can give them a profit participation of 50%, but keep the membership interest to 49. Otherwise, we'll never get any decisions made. If they give you 50% of the budget, then you can give them 25% ownership in the company and 25% profit participation. Some investors will tell you, I'll give you 50% of the budget and I want 50% profit participation. They just want to. It's your decision then to say, am I going to do this or not? You have to remember that profit participation is 100%, and you're going to have to share with other people. You're going to have to share with the cast, very likely. You're going to have to share with the director, very likely. You might have to do some deferments where you share profit participation. You might have to maybe give some other executive producer who helped you find money at some points. So remember that all of these points will be deducted from your share, from your like creative, like producer share. So you have to have enough available for you to have a profit participation in the end left that you can enjoy. So be very careful in assigning too much profits too early. So that's why you can also give a feedback to the equity investor and saying, I understand you want 50%, but remember, I also have to give the cast, our Halle Berry, a large percentage, because we're all saving a lot of money, because she's not charging her full fee. She could be charging us $5 million and she only charging us $1 million. You're saving $4 million right now. So I need you to be chill on this and release some of these backends so I can pay Halle Berry and give Halle Berry a backend profit participation. But that's the kind of conversation that you would be having with your equity investor. You always want to make sure that they understand all the risks. And obviously you put in the business plan that you give them and the finance agreement that you do with them that you are not responsible to pay their money back. There is no, that you actually say exactly, you investor can lose all your money by signing this deal and giving me your money. You need to make it that clear, and you cannot do any rights and give not any rights and warranties about any kind of performance in relation to repayment. You can make performance suggestions, which would say like, if I don't give you half of your money back within 2 years, a late fee of $100,000 will occur. So if you're late in repaying them, you're going to maybe give them a late fee or a little bonus or something because it's taken longer. That you can do theoretically, but you're never going to agree to actually securing this or guaranteeing any of these kind of payments because you can't. Equity is high risk investments, and there is no way for you to secure anything and to agree to anything as a guarantee. So you should not be doing that. You should tell them there are certain risks involved. A, you can lose all your money, risk number one, but B, there are certain risks here that I can mitigate for you. Production risks, budget overages, abandonment. These risks are covered by the completion bond insurance, so there aren't any. Done. Risk mitigated. Revenue risks. When you tell them payments are coming into the collection account, and the collection account is handling all the repayments of any loans and all the payments to the sales agent. So I personally don't get any money paid to me, so I don't get my hands on the money. I'm protecting this revenue stream through a third party that's basically like an escrow agent. There you go. Revenue risk eliminated. There are certain things you can do that you point out to them that say, I'm eliminating these risks. Performance risks. You tell them the sales agent gave us these beautiful sales estimates and I made them responsible to hitting those estimates because they have a performance clause. So now you are mitigating, not eliminating, but mitigating the potential performance of your movie and the potential distribution revenues. These are all sales items you can use when you attract an investor and get them to your project, because they know it's a high risk investment and they want you to walk them through the risks and explain to them how you're strategizing to eliminate or mitigate those risks. So that's important. The mezzanine investor can sometimes be an equity investor as well. By the way, a junior loan can also be done, a senior loan can also be done by the equity investor. If you do, let's say, have an equity investor that says, I don't want a bank in front of me, I don't want a mezzanine lender in front of me, I want to recoup in first position, otherwise I'm not giving you money. You can say, okay, there's two ways to do this. One is you become the bank for this portion of 20% that I would have got from the bank otherwise. And you can charge me whatever the bank would charge me. So you make interest on this portion. So then for you, it's not more expensive to pay this equity investor than you would pay the bank. It gets more expensive if the equity investor insists on a premium, because now you're paying 20% on this money, where you before were paying maybe an interest of 4% or maybe 8% for the term. So it could get expensive, but equity investors sometimes are okay doing a loan and saying, okay, this portion of the investment is going to be subject to loan terms because now the loan is secured against the movie and I get to actually collect and take over the movie in case you're not performing. That's an additional security for them. They cannot take over the movie if they're an equity investor because there is no securing for them. They are attached to the IP forever, but they can't take it over and take it away from you. They can only do that if they give you a loan. So that's something for them to say, you know what, that's an additional security. I now have a real asset, which is the movie that I can take and do my own thing with in case you're screwing me. Something to think about. The mezzanine investor, like the same, then the equity investor is going to look at the collateral that's available for them after the senior loan has recouped. So their investment is driven by what's left in collateral after the bank has recouped their loan. And based on that, they'll give you a loan. And they're similar to a bank in the sense that they recoup before the equity is recouping. They're similar to a bank that they're often charged an interest. They're not similar to the bank that they're often charged an executive producer fee for whoever is doing the loan. And they're often charged a premium and potentially even a back-end profit participation. The term is longer. The term for mezzanine loans can be 5 years, can be a much longer time versus the term for the bank is maybe 2 years max. So there are certain things. Now, the mezzanine lender can take the movie away from you as the bank does if you don't pay them. So if you don't pay the mezzanine loan within the term, they take the movie over and the movie is gone. And it's going to be very damaging to the equity investor and you because you may never see a dime. That is the risk that you are taking when you are using a mezzanine lender. I would say to you personally, don't use a mezzanine lender unless you cannot get it covered by equity, because it's a very tricky thing to do. Now, the subsidy lenders, we do know are there to help us monetize this money that we would be receiving after we shoot a movie in a tax incentive or subsidized region that we would be receiving after we're done the movie. So when we receive it after we're done the movie, it's not really helping us reduce the equity risk or cover our budget. So the idea here is to get the budget done by the line producer, go to someone local in the tax region to have them tell you what the estimate would be for the tax incentives that you could be getting, using someone that the tax incentive lender approves, give them the estimate, and then have them pay you for what you will be receiving later. The advantage for you is you could get to use it for the finance plan. The other advantage for you is you don't have to worry about getting paid because the incentive lender gets paid by the tax incentive region. And you don't have to worry about any legislation changes, as we have many in the US states. Incentives come and go. Incentives run out of money. Incentives have all of a sudden changes in what they consider an eligible spend and what they don't. So all these changes are detrimental to you if you have to deal with them. It's a headache that you don't need. Give that headache to the subsidy lender instead and just pay a little for it. So they give you an incentive you could to use for the production budget, and then you pay maybe anywhere from 5 to 25% for this service. You do have the option to get a bank loan for this incentive. The banks do the same thing than the subsidy lenders by saying, okay, you're going to shoot in New Mexico. We saw the estimate. We're going to lend against this estimate. Problem is this, you have to pay the bank that loan back. It's going to be part of your senior loan. So you do have the headache that I just mentioned about changing legislation, changing things in the in the incentive region, that headache you do have. The only positive side here is if you are spending more money in the tax incentive region than you had estimated, for example, the contingency, you know, you might tap into your contingency, and you have to then spend money, and that contingency then becomes obviously subject to a tax credit because it's money you're spending locally. This money is you're going to get. Now, in the first scenario with the subsidy lender, you're likely not going to get any overages. They're going to keep it and they're going to say, thank you, we're now getting more money from the tax incentive lender, and we take it and we keep it. Maybe you have a way for the incentive lender to release these overages to you, potentially, but in many cases, that is not an option. So just keep that in mind. So when you do bank financing, it all comes down to a very early version of a term sheet that will help you understand what the bank loan will look like. This term sheet is given to you the minute you have the first pre-sales. It is given to you based on these sales estimates that are established by a bankable sales agent. So the bank looks at the pre-sales, they discount them the way they feel they need to be discounted depending on who the distributor is, and they discount the sales estimates, unsold rights based on how comfortable they are with the sales agent. Based on that, they'll give you a term sheet. The term sheet obviously includes the down payment that you would be getting, it deducts it. So it gives you all the details of the loan, like the interest fees, the loan costs, the legal fees, anything that's related to the loan would be given to you in that first term sheet that the bank will issue to you. The bank is going to require a notice of assignment from the distributors that needs to be signed in order for them to give you any money, which basically says, dear distributor, you are assigning this distribution revenues to the bank and you're paying the bank. So they want that assigned. That's a form that they will issue, and then the distributor is going to pay for it. They sometimes will recoup out of the collection agent account where the collection agent pays the loan, but sometimes they will recoup outside of the collection agent and generate a separate production account where they want to be paid before anyone gets paid, before the collection agent gets paid, before the sales agent gets paid, because they don't want to deal with anyone getting paid before the loan is paid off. The advantage for you is you don't really care if they're paid out of the collection account or not the collection account. You have to pay them no matter what. But the little advantage you have is because they get paid directly by the distributor, that money does never hit the collection account. So you don't have to pay the collection agency fee based on what hits the collection account, because the collection agent gets 1% of whatever comes into the collection account. And if the loan amount does not hit the collection account, you don't pay them for that. So you might save money here. The term and default provision for a bank loan, the term is usually 2 years. The default is if you don't pay them, we own the movie. Any questions about these items? Okay. Completion bonds are always needed when you have a bank loan. Completion bonds are always needed when you have a mezzanine loan. Completion bonds are not always needed when you have an equity loan, when you have an equity investment. If the equity investor is okay, taking care of overages and knowing that overages can be a part of the equation and they don't need you to have a bond company completion, then that's fine. You don't need to do it. But for you, it is an important thing to think about, simply because it's going to take a lot of headaches away regarding to directors going over budget, things happening on set that create overages for budgets, any kind of situation that have to do with post-production schedule where you delayed now in the delivery date. The on-time delivery and on-budget production risk is very high with anything you produce, and you do not want to be responsible for that. So it is smarter for you to deal with a completion bond that also helps you in monitoring the expenses that you have. They can be your ally by having a conversation with the director. If they take forever to set up a piece of set and the lighting setup is taking hours and hours and hours, and now you're running late on that day in the schedule. You get to not shoot all the scenes that were scheduled that day, and that's going to happen now for 3 days. And you're talking to the director and saying, hello, you're running late. And the director says to you, I don't care, I take my time, so what? In a situation like this, the bond company would step in and take the director by the side and say, you better shape this up or else. So the bond company can be your ally in getting certain things back on track if they are going off track. It could mean that if they say to you, we want you to get them back on track and you can use us as ammunition, could be, Or it could be that they send a supervising producer over to watch all these things and help you produce this movie. In the worst case scenario, if they're really upset about the stuff and they really think you're useless and have no idea what you're doing, they'll take over the movie and you're off the movie. Not a great scenario. So you want to use them carefully. You don't want to look like you're an idiot who doesn't know what you're doing, but you do want to use them in case you have to when things are getting slightly off track. The bond company will be charging you based on what the budget is. And when I say the budget, I mean the bonded budget, which is the strike price budget. Now that budget can include some exclusions. So you can say to the bond company, I don't need you to insure my legal fees. I don't need you to insure my finance fees. I don't need you to insure my fee, the producer fee. I also don't need you to insure the development fees or any rights related fees because they're paid on the first day. You can exclude those items from the budget and then it becomes a strike price budget for the bond company. And then the 2% they charge will be on that versus the entire thing. They will have to approve the production location, they approve the production shooting schedule, and they approve the production post-production schedule. They will look at that very carefully and approve it. They of course will look at the budget very carefully and they will want to see deal memos in place with people to support the numbers that are in there as line items. They want to see quotes, like for example, you have a set build. They want to see a set building quote from the set designer. They want you to support the numbers that you are putting in front of them in your budget to then approve them. If they are not sure about a certain scene, let's say there is a scene that's shot on the water and they're really not sure how that scene is going to be shot. It could be shot in a way that it costs a lot of money and it could be shot in a way that it doesn't cost a lot of money. Storyboards are going to be very helpful in explaining to them, and that is usually something the director does, how certain scenes are being shot that could potentially be expensive. So you're going to have the director do storyboards for the bond company, and it's important that the director understands that they're going to have to be subject to very thorough questions by the bond company as to how they want to set up a scene. The bond company also approves the production cash flow schedule, which is basically them releasing money to you in a certain period of time to cover your costs. So you don't get the money all up front. You get it in accordance with the bonded production schedule. That includes payments to you. They don't give you the producer fee up front. They pay you 20% on maybe pre-production, 20% when the shooting starts on principal photography, another 20% when the principal photography is completed, another 20% maybe when you're halfway through the post. They'll give you an installment plan and they will hold back a certain amount of your producing fee in case there are overages, and they're going to be using that for overages. So your job is to keep that amount very low. The holdback should be as low as possible because there might be a chance you're not seeing that money. So it is important for you to have a negotiation as well in regards to your producing agreement with them, which you're going to have a separate producing agreement with them, and in regards to the production cash flow plan, so you can make sure that you get your money on time when you need it to do your movie properly. They are going to approve all the director and cast deals, and they sometimes approve the crew deals for the head of departments. So they're going to look at those to make sure that they're not affected in any shape or form. And again, they will do health tests with cast. They will do health tests with the director to make sure that people are fit and not on drugs. And they require this. They require an E&O insurance and a production insurance that has workers' comp, obviously. And they will look very closely at the contingency. So their contingency, the contingency request is usually 10% from the bond company. Your job is to get it down to 5%, because you have to find money to cover this contingency and you don't know if you're going to need it. Ideally, you don't. I mean, it's a good little cushion to have, but you have to cover it. And that's going to cost you money because you have to have an equity investor that pays for this portion and you're going to pay them 20%. So it's all related to cost. So your job is to keep the contingency as low as possible. Questions? You guys are great. So production and crew deals. What I do in many cases is that I use a payroll company to manage my crew so that I don't have to deal with paying them every week or every 2 weeks, depending on what the deal says, paying them their fringes, paying them the insurance benefits, etc. So I have mainly payroll companies deal with that. We were able at the time to do independent contractor deals that are basically deal memos to say that whoever you hire is an independent contractor, and that would save you money in payroll taxes, for example. It's getting harder to do this these days. So what you'll find is that you will be subject to payroll tax no matter what. And it's going to be basically you employing these people for a certain period of time and making them W-2s rather than W-9 employees. I do use W-9s for my director, and I do use W-9s for my cast, because there I can say this is a very high fee. And my writer, for example, this is a very high fee, and I really, they're just paid for a service, and they're not really employee. So that is something, because these people also do their own thing, and they have their own loan out companies. So that I can do with those kind of expenses. I can do W-9s. You want to have the bondable line producer do most of the crew deals, so you don't have to pay the lawyer. If they don't want to do the crew deals, then they lease negotiate it. So they have to be responsible for the budget and the line items, and they have to obviously be bondable, but they also have to fight for those line items. It is their job to keep everything in line. It is the line producer that the bond company looks at to report to them and say, we might face issues, we might go over budget in this line item as it looks like right now. I want to pull some of the other line item to cover this. Is that okay? So they're going to have these kinds of conversations with the bond company, and that's their job. You want to have your LLC early on be a guild signatory, because if you're not a guild signatory, you can't use these people. You can't use SAG actors, you can't use DGA directors, and you can't use WGA writers, and you can't use any of the union crews. So you want to do a guild agreement, a guild signatory early on to become a signatory with the guild. You just contact them and say, I'm planning this movie, I want to become a signatory, all is well. What you can do with like IATSE, which is the union for crews, you can do a low budget deal with them. You can say, I'm going to make this movie for $1 million. I want special rates from you. I can't afford these union rates that you're throwing at me here. I need you to work with me on this. And then they do a low budget deal with you to allow you to use union crews for lower rates. So that's something you definitely want to do. The guilds may require that you pay what is called a guild bond, which is an advance that is paid to them so that their people, their guild people, their union people get paid. So they make sure that everyone gets paid. So that bond is usually either paid to the guild or paid to the payroll company in advance, and basically is then used to pay these people and pay them their salaries. The guilds also charge residuals, and the residuals are based on the international distribution of your film or TV project, and are calculated based on what is sold where and the revenue. So there's a very complex formula that they use, and Cheryl Compton, who was one of the guest speakers for this class, is always available for you to contact her in regards to calculating guild bonds and guild residuals up front. So you can put them in your budget and also can put the residuals in your recoupment schedule. And so you know what they likely will be. And she can do that based on the sales estimates that you have and based on the budget that you'll give her. Questions?
Yeah, one quick question.
Yeah.
What do payroll companies base their fee off of?
Payroll companies like entertainment partners, they base their fee on who they have to pay. So let's say you have your crew deals and they all together $500,000. They charge a percentage of whatever that entire amount is, and it varies. So it could be as low as 0.5, could be as high as 1%. It really depends on what the payroll company is, who the payroll company is and what they're doing. Okay. So I would call entertainment partners. They do this. What other payroll company is there? ADP, but they don't really do entertainment. I mean, you can use any payroll company, honestly, but I like using payroll companies that are versed in our industry. So I many times use entertainment partners, and they're very good and they're very feasible. And you can call them and say, I'm putting this movie together. What would you charge me? It's a low budget movie, and how much will I have to pay you? And sometimes they do deals because they want to make sure that they have relationships with producers and create new relationships with producers. So that's worth it for them to give producers that do low budget movies and that are new, give them an incentive to sign up with them because they know that you'll work with them over and over and over. So you can do deals with them. They're not set in stone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So when we do in-kind service and deferment agreements, they're two different things. An in-kind service can be someone who says to you, I am a UPM, a unit production manager, and I really want to have a line producing credit on this show because I really want to be a line producer. I want to up my game and I want to be hired as a line producer going forward. I am willing to do the show for the UPM rate instead of the line producing rate if you give me a line producing credit, or I'm willing to do it for half of my salary if you give me a line producing credit. This is an in-kind service that you don't have to pay because they're basically waiving a portion of their fee. Okay. A deferment is when you talk to a post-production house and say, I'm going to be posting with you. And they're very happy because they need to fill their suites. And they say, and you say, I would like you to defer 50% of the post-production budget to the recoupment. So that means they're only charging you 50% on closing. So your budget now drops by the 50% of the post-production component. That's removed as a line item. That also reduces the strike price. It reduces the need for you to cover this portion. And then they defer it to be paid out of the recoupment. And sometimes what they do is when they defer it like this, they charge a premium, like a 10% premium on it. So the 50% that you're deferring would then cost you 10% more as a premium. So these are the two ways of dealing with in-kind services versus deferments. Sometimes deferments do, deferred parties do require a small profit participation. I did a deal with Lip Sync on my Halle Berry movie, and I think I paid them 2% of profits or something, in addition to the 10% deferment that they charge me. So there are, there are some post sizes that also say, okay, well, we're kind of an investor because we're basically investing the money that you're not paying us. So we want also, become a profit participant. So that's a conversation to be had, but it is important to define what is the role of this person or this company. Are they in-kind service, which means you don't pay them? Are they a deferment, which means you do pay them during the recoupment? And is the bond company in agreement with what you're doing? Because the bond company might say, I don't care that the visual effects house is deferring half their salary. Doesn't mean anything to me, because if they go over budget, what does that mean? It means nothing. So anyone that defers, the bond company usually would want to also have them guarantee that they do not go over budget many times. So these deferment agreements need to be run by the bond company to make sure that they're in line with what the bond company requires. Questions? Okay. The collection agreement is basically the heart of your movie. You're going to find a draft of a karma agreement in your module. It basically combines all the various people that are either profit participants, distributors, like the sales agent, or are that get any kinds of expenses or get any kinds of repayments, like the bank, the mezzanine lender, the equity lender. So anyone who gets money or expenses or deferments, anyone is connected to the collection agent management agreement and is going to be a part of the collection agent management agreement and needs to sign the collection agent management agreement. So all that it is happening here is that everyone you do deal with, their terms combine in this collection agency management agreement. And that's where you combine and see if everyone fits. What happens sometimes is that, for example, you do a deal with the equity investor and you say, you're going to recoup after the senior loan. And you didn't think you needed a mezzanine loan and you didn't want a mezzanine loan. And now the budget goes up. The equity investor doesn't want to increase the equity investment and you now need a mezzanine loan. So now the karma agreement should say the equity recoups after the junior loan, after the senior loan. You now have to say the equity investment recoups after the senior loan and the junior loan, which is not something you agreed with the equity investor in the investment agreement. This requires renegotiation. So now you have to go to the equity investor and say, So little problem here. I needed to add money because the bond company made me increase the budget, and I'm adding a mezzanine investor who is now recouping in front of you with another 10% premium. Can you please agree to this? These things will happen. There are going to be things that will not match in the end. And this is the time when you have these kind of negotiations. It could also be that when the budget is becoming high because the bond company is pushing it up, you're going to have to do a deferment for actor salary, for example, which you didn't agree before. The actor was there to get $1 million from you, and now they have to recoup half of it, or they have to defer half of it because they can't get it done. And it all happens like right now. So you might find yourself renegotiating some of these deals that you've entered before, because some of the things that happen just plainly happen after you do the deals. And it happens because a movie is a moving beast, and things change, and you cannot foresee certain things, and it will all come about and appear clearly at the time you're putting the collection agent management agreement together. So just be okay with going back and having to renegotiate a few things. And people that are in the industry know this, that there's always something that happens during closing. It just is. There's never a movie where everything just happens that it was as a planned. It just doesn't. Most people know this and they're okay with it, and many people are okay with you renegotiating them. But if it is an investor, for example, who invests in your movie for the first time, they might slightly get pissed. So this conversation might be where you say, listen, you're going to recoup after the junior, and I know it's upsetting, but I'm going to give you more profit participation. How about that? Or I give you a higher premium to offset the risk that you're taking. Give them maybe some little chocolate in exchange for them agreeing to this renegotiation. So just think out of the box what you can do to sweeten the deal for the equity to stay in the movie. Because if they walk, the whole thing falls apart last minute, and then you have a problem. So your job here is to be very careful with all the renegotiations that you're doing, because this is also the period where things can go sideways and this movie can disappear. Very important to know. So I put this little slide together here, which basically sums up all the various actual deal terms for the various agreements. It says here option purchase agreement. You need to adhere to build requirements, 1 year plus extension. There need to be turnaround clauses. There need to be rewrites included. It needs to be part of the collection agent management agreement. The chain of title needs to be clear. All the option rights terms that are important are put in this one little thing. Talent deal, the same thing. Cast deal, sales agency, producer, all these different agreements that we have touched on today. I basically put all these terms kind of on one slide for you. We don't have to go through them all because we already talked about them, but use this little slide, if nothing else, to just kind of remind you. I know obviously going to send you this later, this PowerPoint presentation as a PDF, to kind of remind you what like the basic things are that you need to watch out for. Some of these things might change as sometimes the industry changes, but most of the stuff that you're seeing here has been like this for many years. And I haven't seen many changes on this, even today as I'm putting the deals together as we speak. So this might be helpful. And the same for this thing here, where I put all the finance agreement terms together for mezzanine deals, equity, incentive loans, co-production finance terms, bank deal terms, collection agreement, the music investment deal, the crowdfunding, sponsorship, and the crowdsourcing deals. What those should include, what you should watch out for in there is important. For example, what I didn't talk about today is the music deal. The music deal is obviously driven by royalties. So it's going to talk about how many minutes of scoring are to be in the movie at minimum, what kind of songs will be there, what kind of licensing of songs is allowed, and what will be done, how much is going to be paid for that, what the music budget would look like, what the investment amount would look like, who the composer is, who the music supervisor is, how the music rights are going to be administered, and the music investment deal is obviously part of the CAMA. So those things are part of the music investment deal that you'd be entering into with like someone like Cutting Edge who is a music investment firm that's located in London. The crowdfunding thing, obviously, is a lot of that is handled on a crowdfunding platform. When you put your movie up there, let's say you put it up on Kickstarter, you're automatically agree to the terms and conditions they have, and you have anyone who's investing agreeing to the terms and conditions they have. But let's say you are deciding, I want to do my own crowdfunding. I mean, I don't even know if that's possible, but if it is, you would talk about what this entails, you know, how much money is given back, if any, to the people that crowdfund with you. What kind of swag do they get? What kind of rights do they have? Can they come on set? What is this? Do they maybe get a profit participation? Do they get a credit? All these things would need to be discussed if you do this on your own. Now, some of these things are actually discussed on crowdfunding platforms where you offer these things. Are you offering swag? Are you offering credits? Are you offering set visits? These things, these perks can be offered on the crowdfunding platform as well. Sponsorship agreements would include what kind of product is included, where exactly it is included, in what scene it is included, what the message is related to that is reflected on the product and the brand, what the payment plan is for the brand, and is the brand paying everything up front, or is the payment being split in two, where you get half the payment when you deliver the movie? What kind of release is envisioned, or what's happening there? Is it a TV thing? Is it a theatrical release? What kind of campaign is being done? Is there some kind of brand combination campaign going on where you put your forces together with McDonald's and you come up with a great campaign that is good for them and obviously good for you, because now the branding campaign is advertising your movie and you don't pay for that really. Actually, you're getting paid for it because they're paying you to do it. So these things all need to be included in your sponsorship agreement with the brand. The most important thing here is to make the sponsorship agreement not contingent on anything, saying it's not an if-come thing. It basically just says, this is what this is the services, the end, and you're paying me 50% on this date and the other 50% on this date. There's no conditions to this. And the reason why you want to have a condition-free agreement is you can take that agreement to the bank and get a loan for it, for the other half, if you need the other half. Something to think about. Crowdsourcing is usually done on websites like Stage 32, where people offer their services for free to you for a movie in exchange for a certain credit that they want. Not necessarily need to be included in the comma. It just becomes part of the comma if it's an in-kind service or a deferment that needs to, if it's a deferment that needs to be repaid. So if the crowdsourcing component includes a deferment provision, it needs to be reflected in the comma agreement as well. The collection management agreement, which is the comma, also sometimes includes what I call instruction letters. And that is something where the instruction letter is a side letter that is done between you and whoever's on the side. It's often done for cast. It's done for cast because people don't want to share the cast terms with all the other people that are in the mix. They want to keep that confidential. So in that case, there will be an instruction letter as a side letter, and it will include what's payable to the actor, what kind of profit participation they get, what kind of maybe box office bonuses they get, and where these box office bonuses are applicable. And those things will be handled in the construction letter. The recoupment version of that, meaning the positioning, is going to be handled in the comma agreement, but it doesn't talk about the amounts. So the information itself as to what the deal specifically is handled in this instruction letter, and the recoupment position of, let's say, the loan out company for Halle Berry is mentioned in the comma agreement, if that makes sense. Any questions on this? You guys have no questions, that is awesome. So I want to walk you through this case study, but I think I'm going to have to stop share and start share again, because I don't think it's going to. All right, here's what I'm going to do. Can you guys do me a favor and take a screenshot of this, because I need then someone to walk me through this in a minute. I'm not going to have this in front of me. If someone, maybe Eric, you can take a screenshot and then later walk me through this. Yeah. Good. And then also take a screenshot of the assumptions for Journey to Bali here.
I do need to leave in like 10 minutes though.
Oh, okay. Who can stay for like another, I want to say 15 minutes and can do this? If not, I'm just going to move it over to a different screen. All right, let me do this then. All right, so I have a case study here that's basically, we're putting a budget together and we're putting this case study together. And we're going to actually do this together. So let me move this away. I'm going to do stop share for a minute. I'm going to move this to the left. I'm not going to make this a long thing, but I'm just going to want you to, and then I'm going to move this to the right. I'll make this small. I'm just going to walk you through this real quick, and then you can ask me questions if you have any. Right, I think I can put this on this other screen here. This can work. All right. So I'm going to share screen again. Why is it not doing it? What the hell? Hold on. Okay. Okay. Do you guys see? Do you see the PowerPoint now? Okay, great. So the first thing we're going to work on is the budget. This is what you're going to see in the final. It's going to look exactly like this. And it's going to basically say to you, put these budget line items in there. So what we have here, I might just go to the other screen. Hold on a second. Let me see something to speed this up for you guys. Okay, if I'm moving this, let me see. If I'm moving this budget in front, what the hell? Hold on, something's not doing what it's supposed to be doing here. If I'm moving, it's not doing it. Hold on. Let me do something else here. Stop share. I'm gonna move this one out of the window. I'm gonna move this one into the window because I already have it. And I don't need to ask anyone. Share, page 2, share. All right. So in the case study, I gave you budgets. I basically say the rights fee is 25,000, the writing fee is 150, the producer and staff is 850. So all the budgeted line items I put in here. And then what this budget does, it automatically calculates what the bond fee would be, which in this case has some exclusions. So in our budget, in this case study, it says the completion bond company will charge a completion bond fee on this entire budget, allowing you exclusions for story rights, writing, development, and not producer and stuff. I don't think that's correct. Actually, I want to actually reduce this. Hold on. Excluding, not this one. This is 10. I'm going to take that out, actually. Okay, there we go. Excluding these items: rights, writing, development, general expenses, which is the legal fees, and of course the contingency. So that means the bond company completion bond fee would be 247,355. So this is the moment where you really think about what does the completion bond do and how can I save money in talking to them about exclusion. So this is why this kind of budget is important. Now, when we go to the funding and recoupment, you're going to, I think this is the, yeah, this is the right amount. You're going to talk about the budget that you just generated, which was 16,074,104. You're going to put that up here. You can see that, you can see the Excel, yeah? Okay. And then let's talk about the strike price, because we need to figure out what that is in order to put our finance plan together. In this case, the strike price is defined as the budget minus the in-kind services. And remember earlier we said in-kind services are costs that we have budgeted, but that are now allowed for us to be taken out. In this case, the visual effects company agreed to reduce 320, and the music investment in this case covers our music budget. So both of those are taken out, and therefore our budget reduces itself to a strike price of 15,634,000. And then we're going through the motions. Our sales estimates are estimated at 80% of the budget, which is 80% of 16 million and some change, not 80% of the strike price, because the sales estimates are always driven by the budget, not the strike price. But certain financial elements will be driven by the strike price, and we get into that in a minute. So then you have certain pre-sales that were done, and in this case, the pre-sales are divided in tier 1 and tier 2 territories. Tier 1 being the territories that are very bankable, tier 2 being the territories where the bank says not so bankable. And based on that, the bank does their discounting. So what happens here is Germany is giving a 10% pre-sale. 10% of the budget was pre-sold to Germany. They're giving us 20% down payment. Italy was pre-sold for 70% of the budget. They're giving us a 15% down payment. The UK was pre-sold for 8% of the budget. They're giving us a 20% down payment. France was pre-sold for 9% of the budget, and they're giving us a 20% down payment. So what we're doing here is we are calculating all the payments that we're getting, so we know what our pre-sales are, and we're adding up all the different down payments, which you will have in reality. Not everyone pays 20%, to know what the down payment component looks like. We do the same for the tier 2 territories. And then the problem, the situation that we're dealing with is we're going to look at a few things. A, what is the sales agent charging us for these pre-sales that we have to deduct, which in this case is 6% of the pre-sales that we generated, in this case, only the down payment amount, because that's all we're getting right now. We don't get the pre-sales, we only get the down payment. And the sales agent says, you're making money, I'm making money, I'm charging you 6%. So what we have available right now is 989,682 that we can use to cover our budget. That's the first finance source. Then the bank says, the tier 1 territories that you have made pre-sales for, I'm giving you 93% off. And the tier 2 territories that you have made pre-sales for, I'm only giving you 60%. So they're discounting the pre-sales in accordance to who these distributors are, which is very real, and you're going to see it in your bank term sheet. So I want to make sure you understand this. The entire pre-sale loan, combining tier 1 and tier 2 pre-sales, is 5,179,000. We're obviously deducting the down payment, which we already received and we're using. And so the bank loan ends up being 4 million and some change. Then the interest is applied and is being deducted. So we're ending up with a net bank loan for pre-sales of 3,796,124.93. That's the first loan we're getting from the bank, the pre-sale loan. The US, the unsold territories are calculated by taking all my sales estimates, deducting the pre-sales, and then I look at what's left. In our case, the unsold territory value is 7,233,347.25. The bank would usually give us 50% of that, which is 3,616,000. However, as you remember, banks will cap their gap loan at 20% of the budget, and the 20% of the budget here is less than that. That is why we're only getting a gap loan of 3,212,821, and then we're paying the higher interest. It is higher interest because the gap loan is more risk for the bank. They will charge you more interest. So the net gap loan is 2,829,000 and some change. So let's look at what we have. We have a gross bank loan of this. We have a net bank loan of that. Let's make sure that the gross bank loan includes, does not. See what I did here. I need to also include this and this. Let's do that real quick. So the gross bank loan that we need to pay includes the gross loans and the interest, but also these loan fees that we're paying here. So the net bank loan is the 2.98 and the 3.7, coming to 6.6 and some change. And then we're deducting these two things, loan fee and legal fee. So the bank loan that's available to us right now is 6,535,167.41. The mezzanine lender charges us 15% of the strike price, not the budget, because that's what they want. It's in the assumptions. So if that's the case, that's what you do, 15% of the strike price, plus they're charging us an interest, which we're deducting. The crowdfunder is charging us 5% of the, let's look, budget in this case. So watch the assumptions very closely because we're going to deal with that as well in the final. By the way, the final case study is not something we will be doing together, that you will do on your own. That's why this final prep case study is important for you to wrap your head around. The commission is paid, obviously, and then here, what happens often is that when you get crowdfunding, you're using a portion of it to spend for things. So in this case, you spend it already 20,000 for development. So you already got that money and you spend it. You're going to get it later in the budget, obviously in line items, but you had expended, so you can't get it again. So you're deducting it. Brand integration here, the usual thing happens. We're getting brand integration, we're paying the advertising agency, and we're only getting 50% on closing. So we need to remember later in the revenue that we have to add this. Production incentives. Here are the production incentives. Let's look to the right. Because, hold on. Oh no, hold on, they're not to the right. They're to the left. Sorry about that. Production incentives are only charged on the below the line. So in this case, it is 35% of what our below the line number was. So we're getting 35% of 8.6, which was below the line. We're paying a fee to the incentive lender of 35%, no, sorry, 10%, and we're paying a legal fee, and we're ending up with 2.7. And here, our visual effect and music is 440,000, which we already accounted for by reducing the strike price. So we're now summing up all these finance sources and only the green ones to get to our subtotal and then figure out how much equity do we need to meet the strike price, not the budget. And in this case, it's 14.5%, meaning 2,330,000. So when we look at the revenues, we're looking at this. We're going to see our sales estimates, as always. We're going to see our down payment, and we're going to have our international sales done. Now for the US, we are doing a deal where we have a rent-a-studio deal with Paramount. So in this case, we have to deal with what's the box office, what's our P&A, what do we really have for domestic? Our box office in this case is 20 million. The exhibitor, the theater owner, charges 9 million of that because they get 45%. So we are left with, meaning the studio, $11 million. The P&A that is charged was $1,500 per screen. The P&A fee is 12.5% of that. So we're deducting that as a cost. And we're also deducting the distribution fee that we have to pay to Paramount to do this, to do the rent-a-studio deal. So we're left with 5,718,000, and we're adding that to the revenues as well as our branding. So altogether, our revenues are now 17,768,000, and now we start paying people. We're paying the collection agent, and we're paying the setup fee. We're paying the bank loan. We're paying the guild residuals. We're paying the sales agent. 1 second.
I have a question.
1 second. Let me just go through this real quick, just to finish the expenses. We're paying the sales agent part of the pre-sales that we haven't paid yet, mezzanine, premium, producer fee, and so forth. We're paying all these things. In this case, the in-kind service is actually becoming a deferment. So I'm going to make a note because they want this back. Usually that's not the case because in-kind service is free, so you're not dealing with deferments. I did want you to do, hold on, the deferment is actually, 1 second, it's the wrong thing. Deferment is only on visual effects, only on this one. So we're paying the deferment for visual effects only, and then we're paying the premium. So our expenses is 15 million. Katie, you can go now. What's the question?
The question was related to the sheet that you showed us, but I just realized it was my bad. I didn't see what you were showing us, but that was screen difficulties. And I was wondering, oh, is there like a problem with this screen sharing thing? But sorry, my bad.
Oh, so hold on a second. What you're seeing in Excel, right?
Yes, I see it, but I had to like my screen didn't show the entire thing, but I think everyone else could see the entire thing. So it was just for me. I can see it when I watch it on YouTube later.
But are you seeing it now? Are you seeing an entire?
Yeah. That's why I figured it out. But before then, when you were explaining everything, I was like, oh, I don't really see what you're talking about, but now I can. That was like,
okay, great.
just
okay.
a little, yeah, but it's okay. Don't worry.
Okay, well, I will send you this later anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
So our expenses are 15,734,000. We're deducting this from the revenues, which are 17,768,000, and we're ending up with net revenues of 2 million and some change. So here we're paying all our people. We're paying the mezzanine lender, the crowdfunder, the talent, the equity, what they required, because it's not 50% of what they gave us. In this case, they required 40%, and we just had to do it. So we're actually paying 76%, and the producer is left with 488,000 in this case. Do you guys have any questions about this? You guys have no questions. Well, then you know everything. You're perfect. Perfect. I love it. All right. So I will let everyone go. I think it's a lot of people already left, which is great. Oh my God. Yes, perfect. So I'll let you guys go. And we will reconvene next Thursday. I stopped the share, right? Katie, did I stop the share? Yeah, thank you. I see you guys next Thursday at 10 a.m. If you can't make it on Thursday, just watch the recording. And if you have any questions in between about this, always feel free to contact me. Good to go?
Yep. Thanks.
Are we meeting on the wait, are we meeting on the 26th of August, or are we
Oh,
meeting
sorry, no, not Thursday.
the
What am I
section?
talking about here? I'm going to actually put that in the screen. It's Thursday.
No worries.
It's in 2 weeks. Thursday, let me just look it up real quick. Thursday, what is it? It is Thursday the 2nd. Thursday the 2nd of September at 10 a.m. PT time. We will meet to do the final together, with the exception of the case study, which you need to study for. And we're going to do the group pitch. And I have no idea how many pitches we have. We might just have Katie's. Thank God one. I have no idea because I lost track. Some people bowed out and others can't do it. So we'll see how that goes. But the final we'll definitely do together. So I will see you all on the 2nd of September if you can make it. Have a lovely weekend.
Thanks. Oh, also, Jeanette, I sent you a message on Canvas about I signed up for office hours at 1:20.
Oh yeah, great. No, I'm going to do the office hours later on the same link. So anyone who has office hours, just log on to this link at the time you're supposed to be signing on. And then I'll see you
Cool.
there.
All right.
Bye, you guys.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.